You think you'd be doing at 66?
Oh, I would hope to be retired.
And what are you doing at 66?
I'm working my butt off.
No savings, no 401k, not even enough to cover an emergency. She sold her home and with two other women bought a smaller one, living together to save money.
Thank you very much. How has that been?
Well, it's been a matter of life and death.
Roughly half of all Americans ages 55 to 66 have nothing saved for retirement.
This is your birthday. This is your birthday. This is your birthday. Your birthday. Your birthday. I said I'm never coming back again. Next, I stepped away from the mirror. I got my mind made up now, 'cause I can see the future much clearer.
Man, what's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Subscriber died trying. You see the thumbnail. More importantly, you saw the clip. Americans won't retire. Like unless you're rich, it's not looking good. I'm gonna say that. Like I've been looking at a bevy of videos, right? And they got older people who talk about they invested. When they invested in this and that when they were younger, and it paid off in great dividends. And I thought about it. The same, I guess crypto will be that now, if you got in early enough or get in early enough on the next wave. But for the most part, retirement is something that most people won't be able to get. And when they say 50% of people 55 to 60, 66 or whatever, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's boomers and Gen X. And I'm in Gen X, so I should know. um, and the reason why this is important because you got people jobs are not as long standing as they once were. So that's an issue. You got people hopping from job to job. That's an issue. Um, you got companies, just firing people willy nilly. That's an issue. And then on top of all of that, you had the rising cost of living, and that's an issue because apartments prices keep going up and home prices go up or rent goes up, and this idea of overcharging everybody, as people get older, people say, okay, well, like the lady, like maybe I'll take get a smaller house, move in with some people, get my Golden Girls on, just to make ends meet. And then people, some people used to go to the old folks' homes, and I don't. It works for some people. Some people it doesn't. I mean, basically, my granddad died in one of those. Basically, starved him to death. So, I mean, like I said, for some people it works, for other people it doesn't. And then, you got people preying on older people to take their money. I saw a guy here in Houston, you know, 80-something-year-old black man. He had a 50-something-year-old girlfriend, and she basically stole his properties. You know, you know, she stole his properties. He had like 8 properties, and then she put them in a basically bundled them together and gave her and sold them and gave herself the profit. Like it was illegal, but they've been going through this for years to get his stuff back. You got people preying on people who can retire. Then you got some people who don't want to hear this, but some people were responsible parents or grandparents, but they made a lot of sacrifices for their kids and their grandkids at the behest of their own retirement. And we don't, we should talk about that because I don't think that gets talked about enough. Some of y'all, um, some of y'all went to college. Some of y'all got in, people got you an apartment or got you a car, got you some of the things you thought you needed or paid for trade school or paid for this or paid for that for you. And truth be told, they took that out of their retirement, their 401k, their Roth or whatever they may be, and they took the hit, thinking that they were investing in their family, and you just screwed it up, and you just didn't, you wasted their money, so they got taxed on it they got a penalty for pulling it out early, then they got taxed on it, and they gave it to you, and you just like, it's a gift, and that's cool, but you didn't do right by them, so that's a waste of money. You got rising cost of healthcare. You know, people paying crazy amounts a month, and the older you get, sometimes the more it goes up. You know, so that's a whole nother thing that goes on where people just you can't keep up the payments per se. That's why people try to get on, was it Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever, when they hit a certain age, or it just hits a certain what do you call it, threshold, where you're sick to a certain degree, they can put you on it. Saw an older guy talking about how, you know, he was getting overpriced for his health insurance, so he just didn't buy it because he felt like, well, I make enough money that I could cover it if something does happen. And he's like, in the last 5 years, he saved hundreds, maybe 5 to 10 years, he saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on his health care because he didn't need anything crazy because he was just getting overcharged. But I don't even think you can do that now because you got to have some form of health care or you're going to get a penalty at the end of the year. But I guess he was willing to pay the penalty. So it's that. Um, then you got, oh man. Well, that sucks. I just thought about that. Then you got, what do you call that? Upkeep. Whether it was car insurance, that's car insurance, not so much, but the upkeep of these cars, it's crazy. It's crazy. So now you got people just doing their best to stay above water, and that sucks. You know what I'm saying? That sucks because one something happens with your car one time, that could cost you thousands of dollars. And you got people going broke like that, and it eats into retirement, and now you just got to work to live. I got to keep working. I got to keep working. And some people hit a stretch where they planned for their retirement and they did it, but the price of the cost of living went up so high, they thought they had a good 10, 15, 20 years, and it went down to 7 because price of everything. And then going back to the market, as I was talking about, whether it's the S&P 500, you investing in hedge funds, whatever, not even hedge funds, but you invest in an S&P or index funds. That's what I was thinking about, index funds. The S&P 500, that, and you realize, man, because so much is going on in the U.S., companies are going to start losing money. So you're going to have to find different ways to invest, and you're older, and it's going to suck because because I've been there. You look at your portfolio, one day, and you're like, oh, we doing good. And then 5 days later, you're like, where the hell did money go? Like, how did it lose that much that fast? So it's that, and that's gonna eat you up. That's gonna eat you up. And then on top of that, you got people just trying to take advantage of everybody, man. You got people trying to take advantage of people for a buck. So that's a whole nother story. So Americans, won't be able to retire. Most won't. Most Americans can't retire. That's what I say. Most Americans can't retire, and then to make matters worse, I didn't even think about it, but because you got a lot of Americans that are single, you know, you don't have a spouse that if y'all could work together and save money, because but sometimes sex and money is the biggest issues that ruin marriage. So I can't do the sex part, but the money part, like, since people aren't quote unquote fiscally responsible or financially literate, you either drag down one partner or you drag each other down, and then you won't be able to retire. And then sometimes people, do that, and then they get divorced and they get a payout from one person, and then it's sad to say this. I've seen people who divorced their significant other, took half of everything, and they went and rode off into the sunset, and they blew the half that they got, and the other person is can't retire because they're retiring on half of what they would have retired on, right? Because in some of these divorces, people take people's retirement too, So and you be like, where did the money go? And they blew it. They don't even know, and that's crazy, but that's true. And then, and since people aren't married as much, you got people, dying. Spouse is not dying and leaving their significant other, this, that, and the third. So that's happening less. So since you're gonna be single, you're gonna be working, because nobody's leaving you anything. Um, and I don't see the economy changing anytime soon in the next few decades. Because it needs something miraculous to change this downswing, because they ain't figured out how to they haven't even touched the deficit yet. And if I'm not mistaken, for right now, I think it's like 2 or 3 months before the US needs to pay like $4 trillion or $9 trillion. That's when the payment is due. So if that don't make it, you're gonna see more inflation. So if it goes downhill from that, it's gonna go downhill fast, and it's gonna be hard to get back up. So some of y'all, that's when you see the increase to side hustles and side jobs and the gig economy, because most Americans won't retire. So tell me what you think, man. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace. You ever been at the top of the universe? I'm gonna tell you that.